A lot of people think that everybody else thinks like they do and has similar personality traits and is bothered by the same things or energized by the same things. And it's so not the case, right? We're all unique, and what seems really logical to you isn't logical to somebody else. So understanding yourself and understanding the differences between you and other team members, absolutely critical for good teamwork.
Hello and welcome. So glad you could be here for another episode of Courageous Leaders, Connected Teams. I'm your host, Stephanie Freeth. I'm a leadership coach, and I love to bring people on the show to talk about a wide range of leadership topics. And today I'm thrilled that Amy Sell can join us. We're going to be discussing what new managers need the most. There's some really interesting statistics out there that new managers are just not getting the type of training and support that they need to become new people managers. And Amy is an expert in that area. So welcome, Amy.
Thank you, Stephanie. So great to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. So Amy is the president of Yo and Yo HR Advisory Solutions. And Amy has a fascinating career. She's really gone through a bunch of different stages that I'd love to have her describe so that people can hear about her really unique path.
Thank you. That's one way to put it for sure. It's definitely it's definitely been in a journey, and just honored to have been on it. But yeah, I started as we actually worked as a CPA. Thought I'd always be in public accounting. My dad was a banker for 40 years. My mom just retired from her accounting job, so I thought like, oh, this is what I'm meant to be. But things kind of evolved a little bit differently. So.
That's fascinating. Yeah, tell us how things evolved along the way.
Sure. So when I was kind of doing cash flow statements while working at an accounting firm, I kind of thought that something was just maybe missing, and when I looked at the work, I felt that doing cash flow statements and then reviewing people doing cash flow statements and then reviewing people that have been reviewing people doing cash flow statements probably wasn't a great fit. I consider myself detail-oriented for an HR person, but not really for an accountant. And I started thinking about what I really liked doing. Actually did some assessments. Plant Moran offered some assessments, and they kind of came back and they're like, yeah, you should not be an accountant. And I'm like, oh, well, what should I be? It's like, and then they kind of mentioned human resources and law for funny thing. And so I started thinking a little bit more about what I really liked about the job, which included the recruiting and training and looking at different business issues and compensation plans. I'm like, there might be something to this HR thing. So I did some explorational interviews and then went back to school and kind of pivoted. And then it's been great. So then I worked for about 10 years in corporate HR for Ford Motor Company and some companies in Silicon Valley. Worked briefly at the Ross School of Business, opening up an Office of Student Life, but then kind of got involved with a weird niche, talent-related economic development. So for Ann Arbor Spark, I kind of got to be the HR manager for like Washtenaw County, the greater Ann Arbor area. And that was really fun, helping a lot of different companies with issues around talent, how to attract talent, how to retain talent, how to develop talent. And then in 2011, our board chair actually became governor. So a few of us from regional economic development went up to statewide economic development. And so then I had an opportunity to do what I was doing on a broader field. As I say, a bigger sandbox and more toys and more friends, and got to do statewide talent programming. And then about 10 years ago, decided to go off on my own and create an HR firm initially focused on recruiting and providing affordable recruiting services to startups that needed great talent to help diversify our Michigan economy, but couldn't afford a traditional recruiting model. And that kind of expanded into other HR services. And then, we were acquired by Yo and Yo in January. So the journey continues.
I love how you have linked this with policy and economic driving and being able to see the big picture of talent. So that's what's really cool about your perspective is you've seen it on all these different levels, from the working one-on-one with people, but really understanding how does talent drive an economy? which is a really big question. So, what were maybe some surprising insights along the way as you got that bigger perspective?
Gosh, so many. I think one key aspect was kind of a really common view with venture capitalist firms, for instance, like when companies are seeking investment, venture capital firms or angel investors, or even organizations that are looking to make strategic investments will look at the talent. As they say, an A team with a B idea is more investable than a B team with a great idea, because they know how important it is to have that team, and that invariably, yes, there's a plan, but that plan changes. And getting a team that has experience pivoting, that has done all the things that startup needs to do, and can be nimble, make decisions effectively, seek information, knows how to get stuff done, figure stuff out, is so important. So especially with startups and all organizations, really talent is key to growth and thriving.
Mm. I love that you're bringing up that ability to pivot and what you've seen in the startup and VC funded world, because I do think a lot of these lessons go across industries and can be applied to new managers because business is people. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on really applied to new managers, because so many new managers do not get the support that they need. And I'm imagining you've seen this in the startup world, because it's like, hey, go get this product going, make money, like bootstrap, go quick. And there's not a lot of time for pre-training along the way.
No, no, especially in startups, they are just kind of thrown in there. And if the company does well, then they are very quickly scaling. And the people that got involved early, that had the right skills to build the product, sell the product, fundraise for the product, now find themselves like leading teams and like, okay, hire people and get that done. And so, yes, there's no time for training, there's no workforce planning, there's usually not even HR. And so sometimes they have natural skills that transfer well. Other times, what made them great as an individual contributor does not transfer. And they don't know how to let go, and they don't know how to lead and manage. And the results can be disastrous.
Range of things, and even seeing blind spots along the way. So as you said, we have different natural tendencies and we have our blind spots, and sometimes those can get in the way.
Yes.
I've been thinking a lot lately about how could we take all of the things I've been teaching CEOs and senior leaders and really package those in a way so that new managers could get off on the right foot. So, as I mentioned, as we were talking before this, I'm developing something called the New Manager Liftoff. And I will really want to be talking to a lot of different experts, because there are so many different things that we could be teaching. And some of these things take a long time to embody, to practice. And so there could be a combination of what are some ideas and thoughts and frameworks, but also what are practices that we could give new managers early on. So I'd love to hear, if you were designing a curriculum from scratch and you gave me advice on make sure to include these 3 things, we could even start there, because I know there's way more than 3. But what would be at the top of your list to make sure to include to set new managers up on the right foot?
Gosh, that's a great question. And I think one of them that comes to mind is communication. I think so much revolves down to workplace communication. The ability to effectively communicate like what is in your brain versus what you say versus what people hear, and then how they process that. And again, that communication pipeline is very leaky, right? And if you're doing a text or using IM, it's just really problematic, and there's so many misunderstandings out there. So I would say communication would be one. I would say another one is providing feedback and guidance, and being honest with people and direct with people about when they maybe didn't do something that met your expectations, or if there's a conflict there. I think that ability to have those direct conversations is super important. And then I think another one, gosh, somebody to choose from, I would say maybe that vision, being able to have a longer term vision that people can understand and see where they're going, as well as maybe the fourth one would be, again, project management or those steps to actually get there. So those are just a few that come to mind that I've seen issues where, kind of moving from an individual contributor where you don't need to communicate as much, or you're just communicating upward or providing a report, that dynamic changes so much once you are managing other people.
And I love how you describe that leaky communication pipeline. That's a really good way to put it because, as you said, what's in our heads doesn't always land as intended. And so, what I hear is the self awareness needed behind all of this. So, tell me more about what are your thoughts about self awareness and the importance of know thyself?
Another absolutely key one that's on my list as well. Emotional intelligence, self-awareness, so important. And a lot of people think that everybody else thinks like they do and has similar personality traits and is bothered by the same things or energized by the same things. And it's so not the case, right? We're all unique, and what seems really logical to you isn't logical to somebody else. So understanding yourself and understanding the differences between you and other team members, absolutely critical for good teamwork.
I've been driven by the question, why do people do what they do since I was little? I've always been fascinated by human behavior and like, why would they do that? And it led me to seek out a lot of different tools. And you mentioned assessments earlier. I think assessments are super important. I've tried a whole range of them in different situations with different clients. I tend to love using the Enneagram because it's a fast track. It can look at what are those 9 human archetypal ways of looking at the world. And it's almost like a map. So I feel like, and again, there's a lot of great assessments out there, but it's a tool to shortcut the process of figuring that whole thing out. It's like, hey, I'm this type and you're this type, and we see this differently, but it's like a map for these 9 archetypal things. And I know things like DISC and other models can also give people that grounding in at least understanding that people see things differently. So I'm curious about your experience using those different models for mapping human behavior, to put it one way.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of them can provide some value. And I've done them all myself or been part of work situations that have used them. I mean, I do think even Myers-Briggs, where I was actually just having a debate with one of my colleagues recently because, his view is that there's no scientific validity to it. And, and I know people have strong opinions, pros and cons for DISC and Myers-Briggs and Colby and Strengths Finder. And I honestly think that you can get something out of all of the tools. I think anytime you are taking time to understand more about yourself, and if you're in a team setting where everybody has gone through a particular tool and can reflect and share, and there's those aha moments where people are like, oh, you and I are different, and maybe this is why we're having issues because I like to jump in and have lots of energy and make a decision on the spot, and you need a lot of time to process, and then you don't feel comfortable making a decision on the spot, and you want to come back the next day and change your mind. And I might have an issue with that. I mean, literally that happened at one of my work environments where I was trying to understand why what 2 of us worked very quickly in the moment, made decisions, could move on, process things very quickly, but somebody else who joined the team would just sit there in the meetings and then the next day clearly did not buy into what we wanted to do. And it was very frustrating. Or it's like, are you, passive aggressive? And it was like, no, you just need time to process. So we need to give you that time and then come back and make a decision that we're all comfortable with. And so like that's an area that I've noticed, where there's a lot of variety and can cause issues. So I think, again, any of these tools where you're learning more about yourself and sharing what makes you special and learning more about what makes other people special, I think is time well spent, whatever the tool is. And some people really resonate with one tool or another, and some of them don't. I've taken one tool in particular that I won't mention that I just like, this is not working for me. It's not adding anything to the team dynamic. I was glad I tried it, but other things work better. So
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's touch back on vision. You talked about setting a vision and alignment around a vision, and I'd love to hear more thoughts on that and maybe some examples that you've seen when someone didn't set a vision perhaps, and then or could be either example of, you know, vision, no vision.
Yeah. Yeah, well, what's the expression? If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. I think that's, often what can happen if you don't have a vision. I would say, in terms of best practices, I love Entrepreneur's Operating System, kind of the EOS model that a lot of small businesses have adopted, where you have a longer term vision, you're grounded by kind of guiding principles, and you kind of have a 5 to 10 year plan target. And then you also have a 3 year like picture, as they call it, about what it'll look like or feel like, using some descriptions. And then you also have a 1 year plan. So you have specific goals for 1 year. And then you also have what they call quarterly rocks. So, kind of quarterly goals that are supposed to build towards those 1 year goals, which are supposed to build towards the other goals. So it's a nice way to nest everything, I think, and to clearly show where you're going and getting little kind of bite-sized steps about how to get there along the way. So I know we use EOS. A lot of my clients have used EOS. There's other methodologies out there, but I think as long as you have those time frames out there that everyone knows about and are shared broadly, so people know, what are the long-term goals that we have, you're aligned around core values, I think that work is just, critical for success.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I've done a lot of strategic planning with both nonprofits and for profits, and I do like that structure of VOS. It's simple. It all rolls up together, and I run this business on quarterly goals, and then having that kind of longer term vision and articulating that, changing it as it goes. So I think that's something that I do find people have a hard time sometimes articulating that vision, and that having time around a shared experience of what's our collective vision today about the type of experience we want to have in the future. What's that outcome? And then, as you said, having descriptors around what does that feel like? And so, because we can't just think our way there, we have to kind of feel our way into it as well.
Completely agree.
Well, let's keep going. What else are you seeing that if we could teach new managers something that will be with them throughout their career, what are other things do you think we should make sure to include in any type of training or support that we're providing to new managers?
Gosh, what about the importance of creating an environment where there's trust?
Yes, keep going there.
Yeah, and that's where I see, like, we've actually done a lot recently with some of our clients around building trust, team cohesion, i.e., how to not have a toxic workplace where everybody's just spending the whole day gossiping about each other and trying to, imagine what's going on. So I think that, again, that's been an area where it's hard to gain trust, but it can be destroyed so quickly. And so that is one of those things where managers, I think, being aware of that is so important. Another one where you can, I think, lose it very quickly is around self-confidence or inspiring your team. Because, and this is where I think it's really hard, because if you're having a bad day or you're really scared about something, your team will pick up on your mood. And so I think having that awareness, that self-awareness and ability to regulate your own emotions, even when before, when you were an individual contributor, it wasn't that big a deal, but now when people are really looking at you and picking up on your mood and cues, it's so much more important to be very intentional about that. Again, you don't want to sugarcoat something if people know that, like, that's not the case, but just that intentional, authentic communication and mood management and self-regulation is another, I think, a skill that some people need to develop and practice more than others.
I'm glad you brought this up because I think it's so important as well. I'm calling it, in the new manager liftoff, I'm calling it energy management. And what's really under that is, can I regulate my own nervous system? Can I learn when I have a trigger that's something that's probably from my past that takes me down this reactive rabbit hole? Can I learn how to shift, how to work with that and not beat myself up over it? And this is the stuff that I do think takes a long-term commitment. And, faking it till you make it doesn't work in the energy management realm, because in my experience, when you show up in the room, people feel where you are. You can't hide that. And if you're trying to hide it, you're not congruent. What's coming out of your mouth and what is coming through your energetic field, your operating field, are two very different things. So I think this is an area that doesn't get talked about as much. And I think it's fundamental. And this is the part where people get stuck the most. And they don't have awareness of how, nervous system regulation. What is that and how do I do it? So have you seen tools or practices that are some that you've used and bring to people? Or what do you think is helpful in that regard?
Gosh, I love that you're diving in deep, and I want to hear what tools you might have in that area. For me, I haven't got, I mean, other than kind of just emotional intelligence practices and being self-aware and kind of getting feedback from others periodically, and creating a building of community of trust so people will share with you maybe when you need that feedback is key. Um, but I'm guessing that some of those assessments too can be helpful where, if you are someone that is maybe a little bit more emotional or, kind of quick to get frustrated or get triggered, then yeah, you're going to have a lot more work than, somebody that is maybe naturally calm or naturally reflective or thoughtful before they say things. But I love the term energy management. But what else do you find like good for tips and tricks in that
Yeah.
area?
So I've done some work with somatics and really understanding what's happening in our body. And one of my favorite tools is from Conscious Leadership too. And there's a great video around this, but it's getting people to understand when are they in a reactive state. So we call it being below the line. Hey, I'm in a state of fear. And Jim Dethmer, who's one of the co-founders, will say something along the lines of, 95% of people are below the line and triggered and reactive 98% of the time. That it's a very natural, normal human state. Even when we're a little bit, we've got time pressure, we're in a state of fear. And when our body is in a state of fear, it's almost like having blinders on. We can't see creative solutions. So the first step is, can I just acknowledge, hey, I am in a state of fear. What's happening out here, somebody might be doing something and our bodies register that they're doing that to me. But can I get centered and be like, oh, I'm the one who's in a state of fear. I'm the one who has this triggered reactive response. And then they have a whole bunch of shift moves, meaning, can I go from a state of fear to a state of trust, curiosity, wonder, and how different it is when people show up in a state of fear. Again, natural, normal, our nervous systems are programmed to go that way. But how different it is when we actually get our bodies in a state of play, wonder, learning. So it's like, oh, nothing that happens is really bad. We get to learn and grow. And some of that shift move is the breath, quite simply. Like, can we alter our brain and body chemistry with 4x4 breathing, 4 up, 4 down, and do that 4 times. So that's one of the quickest ways to reset in the moment. One of the practices I like to bring to the teams is checking in and having them name it, because it's not a norm in most corporate cultures. It's like, I got to stuff that down. I got to keep this like face on that I can't show how I'm actually feeling. And yet our emotional intelligence, it is a form of intelligence. Our bodies are wise. So when we tell people like no emotions in the boardroom, like that's BS, because, our emotions are telling us things like anger. It's a boundary energy. It's saying, stop. Something here needs to change. Now, I don't need to go blast someone in a meeting if I am angry. I can learn that emotional regulation of noticing, hey, anger's here. And now can I shift to use anger from a place of learning to say, what boundary needs to be drawn? What needs to be different? Like that to me is really kind of cutting edge stuff that a lot of companies are not yet practicing. And I do think that the conscious leadership body of work, I was drawn to that because it goes straight there and it acknowledges our nervous systems. It has people, and it covers a wide range of things from responsibility to curiosity to feeling feelings to candor to letting go of gossip. Like all those things that contribute to toxic culture are the things that particular operating system get at.
I love that. And I have to share something kind of funny that we do that now I feel it's like, oh, okay, this makes sense. So at my company, we kind of have labels, we kind of color. And so they don't cover all the feelings, but kind of green means I've got lots of capacity. I want more work. Like give me more things to do. And then pink is I'm good. I could do more work, I could be busier, but I'm also fine where I'm at. And then we have orange, which means like your plate is full. It could be work related, it could be life related, but don't give me any more work to do. And then red is I'm out of control. Either like a bunch of client work all came in, or I just got, concert tickets and I'm going to fly out tomorrow on a whim. But something has to give. I need to get rid of work. I need somebody else to help me out. And so, I'm raising the flag. I need help. And so through that, and every week when we have our kind of check-in meetings, everybody, they're like kind of even our like project management software, everybody shows what their color is so that we can kind of code of like, okay, where, who needs more help, who is ready to pitch in and jump in. So it is something, it's very interesting to hear, you talk about how many organizations don't share that. And I know for us, we maybe go overboard the other way. So it's funny.
I love that color system. That's great because if you think about how rampant burnout is and that people don't feel like they can talk about it, then you have things like quiet quitting because it's not being talked about and just being able to share, I need help. I'm full right now. Because when it's just another form of nervous system regulation, and then the ability to share that within the team, so that there's transparency and visibility to how do we help each other? Because ultimately, teams are systems, and those systems influence each other. And so, I really love hearing that color model. That's fantastic. So, what else? Let's see. Any other ideas about if you were training new managers from scratch, what are the things to make sure to include? And you could even look at it from the perspective of risk. Like if we don't include these things, these are the ones that are actually most likely to have, because you referenced earlier some disastrous consequences. What do you think are the ones that without them, without those foundational, maybe it's awareness, maybe it's emotional intelligence, that a manager's really not set up for success whatsoever?
Gosh, I guess two that would go in that category for me would be decision making and conflict management. So I think on the decision making side, there's been studies that have shown that organizations that have CEOs that are better at making decisions, even if it's the wrong one, fare better than those that don't. And again, I don't have the study at the tip of my fingers, but for me, that really resonates where in times of uncertainty, like right now, having a leader that can make a decision and pivot later as opposed to just having the team staring at them and losing confidence in the direction and not having a purpose about where they are, I think is highly problematic. And I think it's, good that managers understand there's a variety of different, styles, and you should have a lot of different tools, whether it's just delegating or consensus or being really directive. But I think, just understanding decision making where a new manager falls on that in terms of self-awareness, and then understanding there's different, styles that they can employ, I think is key just to keep things moving along. And then on the conflict side, there's always conflict in teams and there's always people that are not getting their needs met. And being able to identify conflict and to help resolve it and manage it, I think is something that people managers do all the time. And sometimes they don't understand different styles and approaches of conflict, what the root causes are, and how to, kind of get things back on track as well. So I think, two key issues that I've seen. In fact, conflict management is one that has probably come up the most or in the last 2 months with our clients. So
I'm really glad you brought both of these up, decision making and conflict resolution, because so I have baked these two as two of the 4 pillars actually for this new manager liftoff. And I do think, again, the Enneagram really can help in both of these, because when you understand, here's my decision making style, because some types are more ready to move forward. They're in the Enneagram, you look at 3 centers of intelligence, and one is how do I take action? That's the body center. The other one is the emotional or heart center, and the other one's the thinking side. So we all have a different style of each of those: action, emotional intelligence, and analytical skills. How do we think about something? And so I was just dealing with this the other day, is looking at, when is someone naturally more action oriented, or when do they need that time to process, like we were talking about earlier? And so when you can have a fast view of this is where this person is coming from, you can also apply that to decision making, but also conflict resolution, because you know what's the frame, the worldview, the lens that person is seeing the world through. And it gives empathy. It gives like, oh, okay, they're seeing it through this way, I'm seeing it through that way. And to me, it's the fastest track way to get at this fundamental issue that shows up. It's almost like having a new map to navigate all this.
I love it.
And then the other thing I love to bring to teams is called decision rights. Who gets to make this decision? And you can have, again, Conscious Leadership Group has a great tool around this, and it maps out buy-in and time. So when you have less time but you get less buy-in, sometimes just the leader decides. And as you go out, it's like a straight line. You can get all the way to alignment where everybody's for it and you're getting, a lot of input, but you always need a backup decision right, so that it could be leader decides with input. It could be a subgroup decides if they're closer to the problem. Subgroup decides with input all the way up to alignment. Because over and over again in strategic planning, you say, okay, well, who gets to decide these things? Is it a board? Is it the CEO? Is it the senior leadership team? And I think different decisions have different decision rights, and being able to map that out creates less drama in the long term. What have you seen in that whole area of decision rights?
I love that term. I'm familiar with like the wheel, where it's like more from authoritative to delegation. And so, but it is that where, how much in the middle, right? There's, consensus, informed input. And I think that, at the end of the day, somebody has to make decisions. And on the strategic planning side, you want as much involvement as you can, but you also need to make decisions. So actually a tool that we've been kind of piloting for decision making is you kind of rank choice analysis, where, somebody might say, well, everything's a priority. Well, okay, let's, how do you choose between these two and then these two and then these two, and then getting enough input where, you can take input from everybody, but come up with a framework that takes that input, but might not, be obvious to everyone. Because doing strategic planning with large groups of people, that's that good for you. That's about as hard as it gets. So yeah.
It can be tricky. And quite frankly, that's why I double down on some of these deeper tools. Because when there's a lack of self-awareness, when people can't map the system of what's happening in an organization, it does get really tricky to align. And so, sure, you can do organizational strategic planning, but I think without the self-awareness piece, it just makes it really hard and maybe not very effective. And given how fast the world is moving these days, I often find too that you could have a 5 or 10-year vision, but yet the world is changing so quickly. So the best we can do is help people learn in real time to handle decision making. You can have frameworks and guideposts, but that conflict resolution piece and that decision making piece that you're talking about, having people know how to do that in real time, I think that supercharges a team more than just about anything. Easier
Agreed.
said than done, but
Yes.
but it can be practiced.
Yes, all these things are easier said than done.
Yeah. So, there's an interesting LinkedIn study that just came out last week saying that a lot of people do not want to be people managers, that it's not worth it. What's your argument for like when it works well, why is it so important that we need people to step up to this and to be brave enough, courageous enough? This whole podcast is called Courageous Leaders and Connected Teams. Maybe talk a little bit more about the importance of the people side of business.
Oh, sure. Well, I think the biggest thing to mind is impact, right? If you want to have a bigger impact, you have to be courageous and lead. You have to have people follow you. You have to manage people. You're given that opportunity to get things done that 10 people can do versus just yourself. So I just think the impact is key. And if you are smart and have good ideas and good ethics and you should maximize your potential, and that is going to involve managing other people and working with other people at some point. Of course, there are individual contributor roles or technical specialists that have been created. When I was at Ford Motor Company, they had a lot of people that were very technically oriented and amazing engineers, and they did not want to spend their time managing conflict or trying to reward and recognize people or build a safe team space. They didn't want to work. They really wanted to focus on solving a technical problem, and some organizations need that. And there's other roles where you are more focused on the specific tasks and activities. But when it comes to achieving great things or charting a path or executing a big vision or a component of a big vision, you just have to work together, and working together, being a team and leading that team, just all come into play with all how important some of these skills are. But if you understand yourself and take a program and invest in yourself, great things can happen.
Yeah, that's a great summary. So I want to always wrap up with the question that I like to ask every guest is, what does courageous leadership mean to you today?
Well, today it is about that decision making and understanding that there's a lot of ambiguity in the world, and you still need to chart a course and follow that and inspire your team, but also have a heavy dose of authenticity. And when the time comes to pivot, to feel comfortable pivoting as well. And so, now is never been a more challenging time to lean into those leadership skills and understand your own strengths and style and add a few more tools to that toolkit, and we'll make it through.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, it's been great having you today. I really appreciate your expertise and your willingness to share the stories that you've seen. And I love hearing that we've got a lot of agreement and alignment around the things that we think that the new managers need based on what we've seen, through different perspectives, but that there are some of these key skills that if we can give people earlier, I just feel like it's better for everybody in the long run. So is there anything else you'd like to say to feel complete today, or anything we didn't cover that you want to make sure to share with our listeners today?
No, this has been a really great conversation, and I've always been a big fan of yours, Stephanie. So I'm just honored to be here and to have that time together.
Oh, thank you so much. And Amy, where can people find you?
Amy.cell, CELL, at yoandyo.com. And that's not like it sounds. It's YEOANDYEO.com. Love to connect.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for being here. Really appreciate it. Thank you for being an important person in the Ann Arbor community as well. I love getting to see you at events, and it's great to connect and get to share insights and experiences and stories along the way. So thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks, Stephanie.
And thanks to all our listeners. If you like this conversation, give us a like, please subscribe, share it with someone that you think would really benefit from this conversation, and let us know, what do you think are the skills that new managers need? You might be a new manager and be feeling what skills you think are the gaps for you. You might be someone who has been managing people a long time, and I'd really love to hear what are those things you wish you knew 5-10 years ago. And managers of managers who are onboarding new managers, I also like to hear from you. What are the things that you want your managers to hit the ground running, to have those skills? So again, thanks so much. It's been great to be here, and see you next time. And in the meantime, stay courageous, stay connected. Take care. Bye.